Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, where we talk to amazing people doing incredible things that lead the charge of generosity. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, our guest is Kevin Thompson. The story of the shy, awkward fourth grader from Derrington, Washington, turns relationship and connector guru for entrepreneurs. Kevin's passion and curiosity for helping and connecting entrepreneurs is contagious. Kevin learned from a very young age that hard work, dedication, and saving truly help build confidence and self-esteem. By being the friend that he never had growing up has allowed Kevin to better the pond and create some serious ripples. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Thompson. Kevin Thompson, I really want to sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking the time out to be a guest on my Better the Pond podcast. It is fantastic to have you today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I've been looking forward to this, Warren.
Yeah, from our last conversations that we had, you were such an interesting guy, and you're doing so much to, in my world, what I call better the pond. So it was almost impossible for me not to ask you to be a guest.
Well, I appreciate that.
So before we jump into the questions, Kevin, what I would like to know, and the listeners to know, is just tell me just kind of a brief overall view of kind of, some of the work that you do, the things that you do, and how you making an impact in the world. And we'll get a kind of just in a gist about you a little bit, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
Sure. I have been this naturally curious person for my entire life. In fact, sometimes it drives my wife nuts, because she'll be, tell me about something. She had a conversation with so and so, and I'm like, oh, did you ask him about this? Did you ask him? And she's like, honey, I didn't ask him about none of that. I wouldn't even think to ask him about that. Only you would do that. And like I said, I'm just this naturally curious person. And I love, because I'm an entrepreneur, I love talking with other entrepreneurs. I love finding out what they're up to, what they're working on, what's got them all excited, what challenges they're dealing with, what problems they're dealing with. And because I always default to, who do I know that might be able to help them? And so, I started making connections for entrepreneurs, I don't know, probably 14, 15 years ago. And about 10 years ago, I made a connection for these two guys, Brian and Perry. And those two guys went on to become great friends. Perry's company helped Brian's company with a big problem they were dealing with. And about a year later, these two guys held this seminar together. And it was a 3-day event, and there was entrepreneurs, I don't know how many, couple hundred entrepreneurs that invested time and money to go to that. And the first day, there was people who were in the audience at that event that were texting me and messaging me saying, hey, Brian and Perry are talking about you from stage in a really good light, talking about how this event wouldn't have happened if not for you, because you're the one who connected them, and they became great friends. And my friend Paul messaged me letting me know that. And then his comment was, Kevin, one never knows where a well-planted seed will sprout. And I'm just like, man, how cool is that? I mean, man, that just makes you feel really good, because we're talking about impact. And like, here I was just trying to help two of my friends out. But now look what came from that. And look at how many other lives are being impacted as a result of what they do, just because I had the opportunity to help them out and connect them. And that's what got me thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I had a business where that's what I got to do all the time? And the seed was planted. It took some time. I had to get over, I had to grow as a person, quite honestly, in order to even do that. But that first seed was planted about 10 years ago.
So on that note, I think this is the perfect opportunity to take you back We're going to take you way back, Kevin, and then we're going to bring you up to today, because that's going to be part of that story. And, and we can get into like, how did maximum response marketing get on the shelf and get out there in the world, and Tribe for Leaders and all the wonderful things you're doing. So my question is, Kevin Thompson, to you is, what got you from being a gosling? And I'm talking, we're going way back here, right, to your humble beginnings, to leaving the nest. So when you decided to start to get kicked out of the nest, or decided to leave the nest on your own to try to get into your life, to where you are today, Kevin Thompson, what is your backstory?
So I was this really shy kid growing up.
And where did you grow up, Kevin? Where did the humble beginnings start?
So I grew up in a little community of Derrington, Washington, which is about 30 minutes from where I live right now. I have never made it far from home. And I was this shy introvert. When I was a kid living in Derrington, and we lived there until I was in 4th grade. And in that little community, I grew up. I mean, all the kids that I went to school with, or I also would go to church with on Sundays and all this, and it was just, I had all this circle of friends where it was comfortable. It was just, I fit right in. But then in 4th grade, my dad worked as a real estate agent at the time, and he was commuting from Derrington down to the other town, Marysville, is where he was commuting to, and it was about an hour commute for him every day, each way. And so we ended up moving to Marysville just so he didn't have to commute so far. And so I was in 4th grade when we made that move, and it was it was halfway through the school year. And when I went to the new school, now I was the outsider. And things really shifted for me. I went from having this group of friends where, like, pretty much all my life I had known what I had known and what I had experienced, to now being this outsider just trying to fit in. And them not knowing me not knowing them being standoffish, and of course them being a group and me feeling like I'm all alone here. I'm alone there. They all know each other, but I don't know any of them. And sometimes kids can be harsh. Kids would call me Four Eyes because I wore glasses, or apparently they thought I had big ears, so they'd call me Big Ears or Dumbo or whatever. And those kind of comments for a little kid in 4th grade, at least for me, it kind of weighed on me. And it's just like, man, it just made me feel like I was having a rough time fitting in. And all I really wanted to do was I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to have friends like I did before. And so that was tough for sure.
Did you have any siblings along your side?
I had one brother. My brother is 3 years younger than me. And so yeah, he was going through the same stuff as me.
But he really couldn't stand up for you, though, being 3 years behind you. So I guess that didn't help all that much.
No.
So did you spend then? So how many years did you spend there after the move?
Well, we stayed there until I graduated high school. We lived in Marysville until I graduated high school and joined the military out of high school. My father got diagnosed with cancer at the end of my 9th grade year, or excuse me, the beginning of my 9th grade year, and he passed away at the end of my 10th grade year when I was 16 years old.
Oh, so that was a shift.
That was a big shift. And my dad's take on things was, he used to be a commercial fisherman in Alaska in the 60s, and from that experience and just doing what he did, he always told me, he's like, Kevin, the harder you work, the more successful you will be. And he instilled that into me. And so I always had a really good work ethic, even like when I was in high school. I mean, I would work all summer long on farms, local farms and stuff. I would work all summer long in the long hours. Like, we're talking like 5 in the morning until 9, 10 at night, and do that every day. During the berry season, we would do that. And so I definitely had a good work ethic that Dad instilled in me for sure. And
So do you think that he taught you that generally by telling you that, or was it something that maybe that you witnessed as you were growing up?
For sure. Yeah, I witnessed him. For sure. My dad was the hardest worker I knew growing up.
So the harder you work, the luckier you get, eh?
Yes. 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 Yeah.
So you actually
And,
worked. So all through, like in summer, you would actually work on the berry farms. You'd work on the farms, and
yeah.
work all summer long.
Yeah, I would. And even when I'm trying to think how old I was, I think I was in sixth grade. You kids can't do this nowadays, but when I was in sixth grade, I got a paper route, and my dad he insisted on me saving half of my money, which at the time for a kid in sixth grade running a paper route, I was like a little bit frustrated. I'm like, but Dad, I don't want to save that much. I said, and he said, nope. He said, I want you to save for your money. And so my answer was like, well, sheesh, I'm just going to get another paper. So I got two paper routes. So at least I could feel like I had more money, but Dad insisted that I save half. And so I did that. And then when I was getting ready to turn 16, they used to have this magazine called Auto Trader. I don't know if they still have those or not, but
I think they do. I think the Auto Trader magazine is still around to this day. Believe it or not.
Okay, I know they're online and stuff, and I just haven't paid attention to know if they still got the. But it used to be in my area. It was a pretty thick magazine, that a black and white publication that got published every week, and I would look through that thing and like thinking about like the kind of car that I wanted to get when I turned 16, and I had found this 68 Mustang Fastback that I wanted to get.
Ooh.
And I was showing it to my dad. I said, man, I would love to be able to buy this car, but I'm just like, I don't know, I mean, where I'm going to get the money from. And Dad was like, Kevin, you have been saving money for a while. You have all the money you need to be able to buy that car. And that's when it dawned on me, you know what? See, Dad was trying to teach me a lesson that, he, like I said, his thing was the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And he was allowing me to experience that. And I'll tell you what, at 16 years old, having a 68 Mustang Fastback as your first car, I definitely got into trouble with that car. But I'll tell you what else. All the girls wanted to hang out with me when I was in, 11th and 12th grade.
I was just going to say, what happened to that shy little boy that was in grade 4? Boy, the table sure turned at that point, didn't they?
Totally. Yeah. And
so I got a couple of questions for you, because I mean, I understand. It's so funny because I had a paper route when I was 11 years old, and so when I saved my money, I bought my own Walkman. I'm aging myself here, but that was a big deal. It wasn't 68 Fastback, but I remember though getting paid I think the paper. Well, it wasn't actually the paper, but it was flyers, and I think some of them we used to get a half a cent each, and some you get a cent each. But if you delivered the phone book, we would get 5 cents each for what they delivered. And it's so funny. I'm sort of aging myself here, but it's so interesting to think about, what you got paid back then and what it took to actually save money. So do you remember what you actually got paid when you were doing your paper route?
Oh, I was, net or like around 120 a month is what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a lot. I mean, I think about that now, and it's like, that's painful. I mean, even with inflation still, but yeah, about $120 for each paper route that I was running, and so, yeah.
So getting that 68 Mustang Fastback, how did it feel to be able to go, I worked for this, I earned this, I put in the effort, and this is mine?
There was such pride in having accomplished that, and that you're right. It was so much more than a car. It was a symbol for me of look what we can accomplish when we set our mind to something,
Mhm.
And it's interesting because like years later, I mean, this would have been back in that 2004. I know one of my goal at that time was that I wanted to get a Hummer H2, and when that happened, and I got that vehicle, it took me all the way back to when I got the '68 Mustang in high school, because it was the same feeling, that same, just when I would see it or when I would drive it, it was just this like, you worked for this, you made this happen, kind of a thing. And there was definitely this sense of pride and accomplishment around that.
Yeah, and it wasn't so, and it's funny because it's not really about ego or anything, or look what I got. It's that
No.
self appreciation that you did the work, you put in the time, you put in the effort, no one did it but you. And then you set a goal and you achieved a goal, which launched to the next one.
Yeah.
Sounds like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure, right? Yeah. And you come into the realization that, anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. And I mean, I don't know how deep we'll get into this stuff, but when I was young, and having made that transition in fourth grade from a place that I knew and that I was really comfortable and that I totally fit into, then from fourth grade on through about 11th grade, that weirdness, that was a really weird time in my life where I was trying to fit in, but didn't really feel like I fit in. But then in high school, and it was actually when my dad passed away at the end of my 10th grade year. And so for 11th grade, that was right when I turned 16. I turned 16 in between my 10th and 11th grade years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, dad had died that year, and mom wanted me and my brother to go to Christian school. And I was not excited about going to Christian school, but she was like, we had friends there that one, my good friend Scott, who I grew up with, who was a neighbor kid, his mom taught there. And she's like, look, she goes, I just want you guys to try it out for one semester. And if you absolutely hate it, you can go back to public school, but I just want you guys to try it out and stuff, you and me and my brother. And so we did. And I just totally fit in at that school from day one. And I don't know what shifted. Maybe part of it was probably this pride in just pride I was feeling around this car, that I felt so accomplished and stuff. And that what was kind of cool is that I knew some kids at that school already, because they were neighbor kids that I hung out with and stuff. But I didn't get to hang out with them at school because they went to this other school, private school. And so the neighbor kids that I knew, I just fit right in with them. And my class size, my 10th grade or 11th grade class size at the school I was going to was about 900. My class size at this new school was 16. The entire high school was like 80 kids, so way smaller, and I just totally fit in. In fact, I'll give you an example. When I was graduating, that my senior year, we had the senior prom, and us guys, me and Scott and my friend Barry, we're all three of us sitting around talking about, like, who we were going to invite to prom and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to invite Lissa. And my friend Barry goes, oh, no, you're not. He's like, I'm inviting Lissa to prom and stuff. And what's funny is with about 3 years out of high school, Barry and Lissa got married, and they're still together to this day. And so I was like, well, you know what? Then maybe I'll invite Lissa's younger sister, Cammie, or her friend Daedry. And I was like, I'll just have to think about it and make up my mind who I want to invite. Well, my buddies must have told Cammie and Daedry, because like on the lunch break later that, I can't remember if it was that day or the next day or whatever, but the two of them came up to me and said, hey, we hear you want to take one of us to prom, but you can't make up your mind who you want to take. And we don't think you should have to make up your mind. We think you should just take both of us. And I'm like, dang, who gets to do that? I was like, okay, I'm in for this. So that did wonders to just build my own self-confidence. From going from this 4th grade to this 11th grade window was just weird. And I had low self-confidence because I felt like I didn't really fit in. But once I got to this new private school, and and when mom came back and was like, well, how you like it? Do you want to stay there or do you want to go back to public school? I'm like, Mom, I totally want to stay here. And of course, she was really happy about that too, And
but what about your brother?
My brother loved that school as well. And so he kind of had, we were kind of going through this together because he that window was weird for him too and stuff. Mm-hmm. And but at the private school, he totally fit in, and he ended up graduating from that school as well. So
so it sort of took you up to like grade 10, 11, and then 12 is really when you kind of really started to find yourself and gain that self-confidence to be able to really get out into the world.
Yeah.
So tell me then, which will lead me into the next question, is then what got you to leaving the nest? Because you alluded into it earlier. You said you went and hit the military. So you decided to leave the nest and off into the military you went. And what drove that decision?
So I was wanting to go to college and study business, but mom just didn't have the funds to do that. So I ended up joining the Army, and I ended up walking into the military, the local Army recruiting office in my hometown. And when I was senior in high school, and I just walked in there and told the sergeant there that I would like to join the Army. And so we got everything all set up and did everything I needed to do, and testing and all that stuff. And when I graduated high school in '83, took the summer off, and then in October I headed off to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for boot camp in the Army. And my hometown recruiter guy, John, he was like, Kevin, I got to tell you, he's like, you are the very first person that ever just walked into the recruiting station and said, I want to join the Army, and it just went off without a hitch. He's like, most of the time when that happens, it's because people are in trouble or they're trying to run from something or what have you. And he's like, the people that we do sign up, he's like, I have to go recruiting at the high schools or whatever, and have conversations. But he's like, you just walked on in and it was a done deal. That was joining the Army. I mean, I was in telecommunications, and that was, I was in the military from 1983 to 1987. And that was when all the stuff was going on down in Central America during that time. Mm-hmm. And I spent 2 tours of 6 months each down in Honduras. And my very first tour in country, within 2 days of getting there, I was working one evening, and I get a call from somebody, and they just said, hey, I would really like to call home and talk with my wife if you have a line available. And I'm like, sure. And so I just gave them a phone line. And in the place that I worked, it was a secure area with MPs out front and all that. And the next night, I get a call from the MP gate, the military police out front, and they're saying, hey, Thompson, there's some full bird colonel out here wanting to talk with you. And I was like, okay. I'll be right out there. And I'm like, at the same time, I'm wondering what in the heck is going on. Why is some full bird colonel out here wanting to talk to me? I must have messed up or something, because that's not normal. Mm-hmm. And I get out there to the MP shack, and he's standing there, and he's got a big old plate of spaghetti with garlic bread and salad and all this. And he's like, I just wanted to come over and say thank you. He's like, I'm the one that you gave the phone line to last night. And he's like, I know that you didn't have to do that, but I just really appreciate the fact that you did, and that I got to call home and talk with my wife. And he's like, I work across the base. I run a unit over there. And if you ever decide that you want to come over there and have drinks with me and the guys, he's like, drinks are on me. And I'm like, you know what? This military etiquette down here in Honduras is way different than it is at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. and I ended up becoming good friends with them. And I would hang out with them. They ran the helicopter crew over there, and they would also take trips around the country and stuff and go to different beaches, and they would like fly me around with them on my time off and stuff. And that was when I also really learned the value of relationships. That one experience really taught me, because I'm like, I had no idea who that gentleman was when he called. I didn't find out until after the fact, but just because he asked for a simple thing, and I was like, oh, sure, here you go. And that one little thing had such an impact on him that, he just wanted to show some appreciation for me. And I'm like, that was a really valuable lesson, and it served me very well ever since.
And that's a perfect lead in, actually. I'm gonna jump a little bit of time just to be a good steward of time, but that takes me into what you said earlier about, making a connection. There's two other guys, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know, all these things come out of it. So bring me a little bit up to speed, Kevin, and to kind of what's going on today. And you can weave in those pieces of your history there as well.
Sure. So yeah, I had that experience like 10, 11 years ago with Perry and Brian, and connecting them, which really kind of planted the seed for me of like, wouldn't it be cool if that could be your thing, that was what you did for a living? Mm-hmm. And it took a lot to get there, and it wasn't really until 2017. So this would have been like 5-6 years later, when I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Tim, and he was like, Kevin, why have you never held an in-person get-together for all these amazing entrepreneurs that you know? And I'm like, I don't know, I guess I've just never thought of it. And he's like, well, you should. He's like, because if you did, I would totally want to be a part of something like that. And that just really got me thinking. And in fact, that night I couldn't sleep because I was so jazzed about it. I was telling my wife, because what I envisioned in my mind was throwing a big party for a bunch of people that I just really liked. And I'm like, that was a cool thought. And so the next morning I get up and I come into my home office here, and I sit down and I start going through all my email contacts and my Facebook contacts and my LinkedIn. And I just start making a list of like, who would you want to invite? If you did this, who would you want to invite? And I made the list, and there was probably about 100 people on that list. And then I started looking at them like, okay, so why these people? Why these people here? And I started looking at like who they were, and the commonalities were really simple. As once I had the list, that they all had existing businesses where they were, had a great track record of getting results for the people they serve. And on the other side of the coin, they were some of the most giving, generous people of contribution I knew. And so I just knew that if you get people like that together, I didn't know what would happen, but I knew it couldn't be bad. In fact, I knew like it's gotta be good if you get people like that together. And so I just started reaching out to people. And over the next 2 days, I had 6 conversations with 6 people, and all 6 of them were like, Kev, if you do this, I'm totally in. I would love to come to something like this. And Warren, I can't remember the last time I was 6 for 6 on any day. But it let me know that I was on the right track. Yeah. And that 3rd day after that, I was flying to LA to go speak at a seminar. And at that seminar, I caught up with another friend of mine who I hadn't seen in like probably 6 or 7 years. And we were catching up, and he was asking me what's going on. And of course, that whole experience was top of mind. And so I started sharing it with him, and he was like, man, he's like, Kevin, let me get this right. He's like, because I know 3 of these people. He's like, and these are like well-to-do entrepreneurs here. And he's like, you've never done nothing like this before. You can't really articulate what's going to happen because you've never done it. I mean, so you're not like, it's not like telling them this is what you're going to get if you come. You can't do that. And he's like, but yet you've got these 6 people that are going to fly across the country. They've invested money and time to come to this thing. And he's like, you know what? He's like, that speaks volumes to the relationship that you have with those people and the trust that they place in you, because they're just trusting you. That's why they're coming.
Mm.
And that was a huge thing. And I'm like, you know what? I had not thought about that before, but he was absolutely right. And when I held that first event at my home, in fact, right on the other side of this wall right here, it was August of 2017. I had 15 entrepreneurs who had flown in for that event. And that first morning, when I'm standing there in my living room, getting ready to welcome them and kind of have opening comments, really, I'm like, wow, look who is sitting in my living room right now. It was a really humbling experience, Warren. And that one event, that really launched it. I'm not going to say that I immediately had it all figured out or anything like that, because far from it, but that was the launching pad to what I get to do now.
And when we get into a later question in this, that's where actually we're going to actually dive right into that. So my next question for you, Kevin, and you've kind of already answered it. I'll see if you want to make any additions to it. But I believe that we are all odd ducks. I believe that we're all misfits, right? And you sort of alluded back to your grade 4 experience of what made you an odd duck and what made you you. But did you want to add anything else into what you said earlier about there was the awkward time, you called it, right? But if you really sit and think about it, what makes you awesome? And I don't mean this from an egotistical standpoint, but what makes you different? What makes you unique? And what makes you an odd duck, Kevin?
So I'll tell you what I believe really makes me unique. I mean, so like I said, I love having conversations with entrepreneurs. I love hearing what they're up to. And so without real, and like, my wife thinks it is weird, because she's like, I would never ask people so many dang questions like you do all the time. And I'm like, but that's how you really get to know somebody. And so, for a long time, I did think like, man, maybe I'm way too nosy. Maybe I'm way too nosy, but it just felt right. And what I've found is when I'm in one-on-one conversations with people and I'm just asking them questions about their life, about their business, about what have you, because they can tell that I genuinely care about them, that I'm not just asking questions just to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell that I asking questions because I care. And as a result, a lot of times, they end up sharing really deep, personal, intimate stuff that they might not share with anybody else. And of course, that's when you really get to connect with somebody. We don't make meaningful, long-lasting connections talking about how everything's great and everything's rainbows and unicorns. We make those real, meaningful, long-lasting connections by talking about where we're at right now and what we could most use help and support with. And what I've found is, I remember the first guy who told me this. He's like, Kevin, the way you are and the way you ask questions and the way and then you ask clarifying questions based on what somebody's sharing. He's like, you made me feel seen, heard, and understood in a way that nobody else has ever made me feel in my life.
So where do you think that stems from, Kevin? I mean, that is definitely a unique ability. I mean, that is not just anybody can do that. So where does that come from? I know you're a naturally curious person. You mentioned that out, but where does that all stem from, where people can actually feel completely safe with you, that they can trust you, that they can connect with you on that level?
I've never even thought about that until you just now. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I think it now that we are having this conversation, I think it stems from that awkward period in my own life, from 4th to 11th grade, where I felt like I didn't fit in, that I just want to make other people feel like they do fit. and that they're okay right where they are right now, complete with what they see as their faults, their insecurities. What, because you know what I've discovered? I don't care how successful somebody is, how big of a business they run, how great things look from the outside looking in. There's not a person on this earth that, for one, that they don't want more appreciation. When they, I mean, like, just genuine appreciation. Everybody wants more of that. And the higher up somebody goes, in my experience in business and what have you, the more isolated they feel, the more they feel like they do not have people in their life that they can really talk with. And I just want to be that friend to them. That's what I want to be. I want to be that friend.
You want to be the friend that you didn't have.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting how that's come back to play out in your life now?
Yeah, and I had never thought about that until just now. Yeah.
Interesting. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So can you tell me, Kevin, tell me about a time when someone did something for you that left a real impact on your life?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. That friend of mine, Tim, when we were talking in the spring of 2017, and Tim Templeton is his name. And when he asked me just that one simple question, why have you never held an in-person get-together for all these amazing entrepreneurs that you know? That one question completely just, it took this thing that I'd been thinking about, that I'd been trying to like, and just it made it real in a way that I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I want to do that. And then I started having conversations. And like I said, those first 6 conversations were confirmation that I was on the right track. And it's interesting is I'm at another level right now. And I've been having conversations last week and this week, one-on-one with people. And those conversations are, once again, confirmation that I am on the right track. And, so I am so grateful and so thankful for Tim in that conversation. And I just recently got to catch up with him. Well, within the last 2 months, I got to catch up with him. And it's been a lot. I'm so grateful for him and that he made that comment to me. And of course, he was like, yeah, Kev, I made the comment, but man, you did it all. You did it all. And look what's come from that. And I feel like, I no longer, I mean, my entrepreneurial journey, it does not feel like work. I love doing what I do. I love doing who I get to do it with. Every single person that I work with, they are people that I would invite into my home. In fact, a lot of them have been at my home. And that's kind of a litmus test for me, is whenever I'm looking at working with anybody, is would I invite this person into my home for dinner with my family and I? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, then I've got no business doing business with them, because I want to do business with friends. I want to do business with friends.
I think there's a couple of things that are really interesting about what you said. Is one of the things that I find interesting is your friend Tim, right, is something so simple as just asking a question.
Yeah.
That had such a profound impact. It was just a question.
Yes.
Right. And it was sort of the pebble that started the avalanche, which I think is really fascinating. They didn't have to do anything massive, just a conversation. So that the power of a conversation. And the second thing I think that's really interesting what you said too, Kevin, is that, I love your litmus test. Would I have dinner with my family with this person? Mm-hmm. And if it's a no, then it's a no. Yeah. And if it's a yes, well, welcome aboard, right? And so now you have a friendship and a relationship, and not a transaction.
That's right. That's right. And I will tell you that when you have friendships, when you have relationships, the revenue follows. The revenue follows. In fact, I just interviewed one of my I don't really call him clients, but he's definitely a client. But I just interviewed him for my podcast last Friday.
Mhm.
And he was talking about the very same thing. He's like, Kevin, I don't want transactions. He's like, I want friendships. I want friendships. And then if business comes from that, then great. And if not, that's totally cool too. And I look at that and I'm just like, that has served me extremely well too, because it's been so rewarding, because business, we can make all kinds of money and business still be very unrewarding and unfulfilling. And money alone, I mean, anybody who's made a lot of money, they can attest, money alone is not fulfillment. That is not fulfillment. There's other things, and relationships, the right relationships are fulfilling and rewarding, and friendships are fulfilling and rewarding. And when done right, the revenue is the byproduct of all that.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Money can buy things, but it sure can't buy relationships. And I agree that once you start creating really solid relationships, the money becomes it's just a strategic byproduct. It's the result of. And I think that's you're very knowledgeable, and I think especially for young entrepreneurs, is to not go and start chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now let's take you up to speed now again, Kevin, from there and say, what are you doing presently right now to better the pond? And what are you doing to make the world a better place? And my second question to that, in part and parcel, is why are you doing it? Why does it matter?
So I am in this transition right now. I have been running this community for the last 3 years in its current form. And what I have come to find out is that if I'm serving somebody who has a business where they're doing, $500,000 to $1 million in annual revenue, versus if I'm serving somebody doing a business that's doing 50, 60, 70 million in annual revenue, it's no more difficult or no more work for me to serve either person. But because of who somebody is, because of who they are, because of the footprint that they already have, because they're resourceful, they have resources, all of this stuff, I can make a much bigger impact over here than I can over here. And so I really got to thinking about this in the last few months. I'm like, what if I started a new community focused exclusively on 8 and 9 figure and even 10 figure entrepreneurs? What would happen if I just did that? And so I just started exploring it. I just started having conversations, and really those conversations only started like in the last month. And what's interesting, so I just had one this morning right before I was talking with you, and this was with a gentleman that I've known for a while. And I told him what I was doing. And I told him, I said, you know what? I've just started having conversations with this. I've got 3 people confirmed for this. He didn't know who any of those 3 people were. And I said, I hadn't even thought about it until the conversation with him this morning. I said, you know what? I was like, I've interviewed all 3 of these gentlemen for my podcast. I said, so if it's cool with you, what I'll do is I'll get you the links to their interviews. They're about 20 or 30 minutes long. And then if you want, you can listen to those interviews and just find out a little bit more about who they are. And I was like, what's going to be cool is like, I guarantee you're going to be like, man, these guys, their core values are totally in alignment with you. And he was like, Kevin, I would love that. He's like, because I don't know any of those gentlemen, and I would love to. He's like, you send me those links, I will listen to them. And he's like, I'm curious, and I want to know more about what you're doing and stuff. And so, and see, this is like, for me, the thought of putting together a marketing funnel or writing a sales letter or anything like that, it's painful to think about that stuff because that's just not me. But having conversations with people that I love, that I appreciate, that I care about, that I would love to serve, now that I can do, that I can totally do. And so we're getting ready to start this new community. My goal is I want to have the first get together. One thing I can tell you about these entrepreneurs, they're extremely busy. I was wanting to do an in-person kind of thing, but I keep hearing, oh, I couldn't do anything till at least October or November, just because they're so busy already. But I was like, okay, then let's do it this way. Let's just have a Zoom call. Let's get together in Zoom, and I'll do it the last week in August. We'll plan on doing that. And then from there, I'll just get you guys connected, and we'll have a few calls there. And from there, you guys are just going to want to get together in person. And so we'll figure out what that looks like later. And so, because you know what, I don't want to try to push them into something. And you asked me why I want to do this, what motivates me. I get to make a big impact in this world serving other people. And most of the people will never even know that I was ever there. But because of who these people are, because of the impact that they are already making, I get to help them expand their impact by doing what I do. And that's what really excites me. And I love helping people who are focused on impact and legacy, because that's how you make a much bigger impact in the world.
And do you feel then that by you doing what you're doing and helping them create a legacy, creates a legacy of your own?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Yes.
That is fascinating. I love it. I absolutely love it. So looking back and looking forward, Kevin, paint me a picture of your golden pond. What, you're the wise sage goose on the pond, right? What does the future look like for you?
Well, running the community that we've been running for the last 3 years, we've been able to have a really big impact in this world. We've got to host some live events with the people in that community, and get to spend time together in person, having a great time together, and me kind of facilitating, just those people connecting on a much deeper level. And for me, what I see going forward is just continuing to step into this role. In fact, so like one of the guys that I talked with last Friday, I mentioned, with this new thing, his comment to me was, Kevin, he's like, I really want to see you step into this role, Kevin, because the world needs what you're doing and we need you. And he's like, I'm going to just tell you right now, what you're asking for this is way too cheap. And he's like, I want to see you step into this because you're just going to attract the right people to you, and you need to be compensated accordingly with the value that you bring to the table for people. He's like, and I know right now you cannot see that, but he's like, as you keep moving forward, you will. And he's like, and I want to help you see that. And he's like, and everybody else that would come into this with you, we all want to see that for you. And I'll tell you, when you have people that you serve that are rooting for you, that as much as you're rooting for them, I mean, how can you go wrong?
Oh, you can't. I mean, that is the ultimate win-win.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody state it like that before. That is really fascinating. Where your client is actually rooting for you just as much as you're rooting for them.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. One of the things that, as you were talking there, you got me thinking is, you talk a lot about creating impact. You talk a lot about creating relationships, helping others and helping others grow and those kind of things like that. And, I believe a lot in the ripple effect. And so it leads me back to the question of, what does your future look like in the golden pond? Is like, what kind of ripple effect do you think that is having on the world from what you're doing with the people that you have in your community?
Well, I've already experienced it, and there's no way to know the real impact that is being had from the work that I've been doing. But what I do know, it is pretty massive because of who I work with. And so that impact is going to get bigger. And like I said, there's no way that I'll be able to actually measure the real extent of it, but you can tell that the ripples on the pond are getting bigger and further, and that just and as long as I am getting so much satisfaction from doing this work, and they are too. It's like, like I said, you have all these indicators that just let you know you're on the right track, and so I'm just looking forward to continuing to grow as a person myself and continue to step into this role. I am committed to those that I get to serve. I want the best for them because it's through them that I get to make the kind of impact that I want to make.
That's remarkable, and that's I have a lot of respect for that. Is you have how much emphasis, and you can tell it's your passion. It just kind of exudes out of you that that you are so driven to help others succeed.
Yeah,
it's very admirable. I have one last question for you, Kevin, and you do not have this question when I sent these to you earlier. And my last and final question is, if you were standing on top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
So I briefly touched on it before. Appreciation, genuine appreciation for other people has opened so many doors for me over the years. And whenever I tell people this, I tell them, do not look at this as a tactic or a strategy. Just let it be who you are. Because there's not a person on the face of this earth that gets enough appreciation. And when we just genuinely appreciate the people in our life, and we've all got, with myself, we all got cell phones with contacts there. And what I tell people is like, you know what? Send messages to 10 people in your life. It could be family, friends, business associates, what have you. But over the next 24 hours, send 10 messages and just let those 10 people know one thing that you genuinely appreciate about them. And don't ask for anything in return. Don't even ask for a response in return. Just send out some love, send out some appreciation, and watch what happens. And when you have that experience and they have that experience, it's going to cause you to go, you know what? I want to do a lot more of that.
That's creating some serious ripples.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well stated. I love it. So Kevin Thompson, I really want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for sharing your stories. I think you're doing remarkable work. Thank you for creating the impact and what you're doing to better the pond. And where do people go to find you, Kevin, so that they can so you can create more relationships?
Easiest place to get me is on Facebook. Kevin the Connector on Facebook is the easiest place to get me. There is a website at tribeforleaders.com as well, but easiest place to, like, if you want to connect with me and have a conversation or what have you, on Facebook is the easiest way to do that.
And do you have a handle on LinkedIn as well, or do you use it as much?
I do, and I'm on LinkedIn, but it's crazy. I'm just way more on Facebook than I am on LinkedIn, but I am on LinkedIn as well. So.
Kevin the Connector on Facebook. That's where we go to find you.
Yes.
So all my listeners out there, I would highly, highly recommend, especially in the entrepreneurial world, to connect with Kevin. As you found out from this podcast, that he is one remarkable gentleman, and you're making great things happen. So definitely connect with him for sure. So there you have it, folks. We had a great time here again today. This is Warren Barry flocking off, and to take you beyond the pond, to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Kevin.
My pleasure, Warren.